It's just not working, Councilman.
All right. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and get us started and call the meeting to order. First item is the adoption of the agenda. Got a chance to look over there. Are there any changes to the agenda from the staff or any member of the commission?
There are 3 new items added under other business, and there was a revision to the request for item 14.
Okay, very good.
I move to approve.
Okay, this motion's been moved to approve the agenda as suggested for amendment by staff. Is there a second? Second. All in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed vote no. It's adopted. Is there a motion to approve or modify the October 11th minutes?
Move approval. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed vote no. That carries. It's possible there are council members here I do not recognize, but I don't see any, so I guess unless they're back there somewhere, we'll move on then to items for deferral and withdrawal.
There is one item for withdrawal. It's number 18 on your agenda on page 9. It's a request for final plat approval to create 3 lots on property located at 5,440 Granny White Pike, and the recommendation is to defer to the November 8th, 2012 meeting.
You've heard the motion is to approve that deferral. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed vote no. We're now down to the consent agenda, or the dissent agenda is almost.
As information for our audience, if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Planning Commission today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Planning Commission's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact independent legal counsel. I'm now going to read the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the Commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. The first item on the consent agenda is item number 1 on page 5. It's a request to amend the Community Character Manual to add District Employment Center policy, and the recommendation is to approve. Items 2, 3, 4, and 5 have come off the consent agenda. And so now I'll move to item 6, which is on page 6 of your agenda. This is a request to amend the zoning code pertaining to the legislative alteration of zoning code standards when amending a PUD approved under the previous zoning code. Staff recommendation is to approve with an amendment. The next item is item 7. It's a request to amend Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code to add automobile convenience as a use permitted with conditions in the IWD, IR, and IG zoning districts, and the recommendation is to approve. The next item is item 8 on page 7. This is a periodic review of the Metro Center Auto Facility SP to determine its completeness for properties located at the southeast corner of Dominican Drive and Rosa L. Parks Boulevard, approved for new automobile sales and service and a communication facility. And the recommendation is to find the SP district active. The next item is item number 9, also on page 7. This is the periodic review of the Sambuca Barber and Styling Studio SP to determine its completeness for property located at 2635 Smith Springs Road, approved for personal care services, and the staff recommendation is to find the SP district complete. Item 10 is the next item on page 7, the periodic review of the Martin Professional Development Center SP to determine its completeness for a portion of property located at 2400 Fairfax Avenue, approved for community education, staff and teacher training, and for an office. And the recommendation is to find the SP district complete. The next item is item 11, also on page 7. It's the periodic review of the Coleman Maxey RV Sales SP to determine its completeness for properties located at 2600 and 2608 Music Valley Drive, approved for vehicle sales and services, an office, service area, and part storage. And the recommendation is to find the SP district complete. The next item is item 13. It's on page 8 of your agenda. This is a request to apply a historic landmark overlay district to properties located at 1612 4th Avenue North and 1622nd 5th Avenue North, and the recommendation is to approve. The next item is item number 14. This is a request to rename the southern portion of the A-Line Avenue to John L. Copeland Boulevard from Weekly Avenue North to its terminus. This request was amended and since the writing of the staff report, and now only applies to the portion of A-Line Avenue south of Weekly Avenue. And while the staff would not usually support a request to change the name on a portion of a street, this instance is unique in that the northern portion is unpaved and looks and functions more like an alley. All reviewing agencies have recommended approval of the amended request, and staff is recommending approval if there are no objections raised at the meeting. The next item on your agenda is item 15, and this is a request to permit the extension of an approved concept plan for 1 year for the Christianstead Valley Reserve subdivision for 24 single-family lots located at 265 Holt Hills Road, and the recommendation is to approve the concept plan extension to October 25th, 2013. The next item, item 16, on page 9, is a request for concept plan approval to create 4 lots and for a variance from the subdivision regulations for the railway buffer yard requirement on a portion of property located at Riverside Drive, opposite Huntley Drive, and the recommendation is to approve with conditions. The next item is item 17. This is a request for final plat approval to create 3 lots on property located at East Nocturne Drive, unnumbered, and staff recommends approval with conditions. The next item, item 19, is also on page 9. This is a request for a variance from the zoning code for a portion of property located at 3067B Whitland Crossing Drive within the Whitland Crossing planned unit development for the required landscape buffer yard and to allow an alternative landscaping plan, and the recommendation is to approve. And then under other business, we have item number 20, a resolution authorizing the expenditure of up to $35,000 from the Advanced Planning and Research Fund to Urban 3 to obtain specialized consultant expertise to develop the Nashville Revenue Analysis Project for the general plan update, and the recommendation is to approve. And finally, item number 21, a resolution authorizing the acceptance, subject to the approval of the council, of a grant from the Downtown Partnership for up to $3,500 for the Nashville Revenue Analysis Project. And again, the recommendation is to approve.
You heard the report from staff. As I have it, we're being asked to approve on consent numbers 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
And not 18.
Not 19. I got too fast. 17, 19, 20, and 21. Is there a motion, or does anyone on the commission want to pull any of those?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed, vote no. So that concludes our consent agenda. What we have left on our agenda then, if you would go over that, please, for us, so we'll all be on the same page. Which numbers are left?
We have 2, 3, 4, and 5, and item 12.
All right. I believe we have a couple of council members who are here, and normally we allow that council members to speak on matters preliminarily, unless they wish to address it at the time.
I'll wait for the case.
Okay, go right ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair McLean and esteemed commissioners. I'm Council Lady Karen Johnson, and I'm here to say thank you for all of the tremendous work that the planning staff has done on item 4, which is the Antioch Pre-Slate Plan Amendment. And before I speak to that, I also want to thank you for approving number 9, Sambuca's Barber and Styling Studio, which was number 9 on the consent agenda. Many of the neighbors I talked with around that area, they're very pleased with how Sambuca's has been a good neighbor to the community and a big supporter for many initiatives in the community. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that is a positive move in the right direction for our community, and we thank you. In regards to number 4, a lot of people in my area have participated, and they're very, very excited about the plan update. The reason being is because a lot of the improvements in terms of open space and green space in our area has been upgraded and added into this new plan. Two things of which were very important to people in my community was the area around the pond in Nashville Village, and that area having the policy placed on it for open space, so that any event the developer wishes to sell that to parks or for open space acquisition, that is available to do. Also, the property off of Smith Springs Road will be a huge addition to our community, and the bicycle loops that have been added outside of the Murfreesboro corridor over to the Smith Springs Road area by Castlegate. All of these added enhancements to our quality of life in the district and in Southeast Nashville are very, very much appreciated. The staff worked tremendously hard. They did a set-aside meeting for the Nashville community because we've had a lot of contentious issues around the undeveloped parcels in Nashville Village, and Tiffany Capehart and Craig Owensby, your entire staff, worked tremendously hard in making sure that all of the questions were answered by residents and that the process was open, unbiased, and inclusive. And so I want to commend all of you on the work that you've done with the plan, and just let you know that I totally support what the final document entails, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there something for public hearing now?
No, we need the presentation. Yeah, the staff presentation.
Ready? Okay. All righty. I'm presenting on Antioch Priest Lake, the 2012 update. These and
Tiffany,
also
pull the mic over to her.
She got 3, 2, 3, 4.
Just to clarify, are you doing all 4?
I'm doing agenda items 3, 4, and 5, which are Antioch Plan Update, the Southeast Community Plan Amendment, and the Donaldson Hermitage Old Hickory Plan Amendment. Agenda item 2, which is the Major and Collector Street Plan.
We'll need a presentation on that, too.
Yes. Michael Briggs is
Okay.
doing that. Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Okay. It won't curve around the laptop. Have to lean down. That's better? Okay. Okay. The Planning Department's request is to approve the Antioch Priest Lake 2012 Community Plan Update, approve the Southeast Community Plan Amendment, and approve the Donaldson Hermitage Old Hickory Community Plan Amendment. And so the recommendation is to approve items 3 through 4 and 5 with conditions stated in the staff report. The Antioch Priest Lake community is located in southeast Davidson County. Adjacent counties are Wilson and Rutherford counties. Within this community, you have the Nashville International Airport, Hickory Hollow Mall, J. Percy Priest Lake, and also some major corridors, including Murfreesboro Pike and Hobson Pike, which provide access both to Rutherford and Wilson counties. So 2 significant corridors there. This is the community plan transect, and glad I put these labels on there because it's a little hard to see. But this is the organizing mechanism that is used to apply the community character land use policies. So you have some district policies near the airport, T2 rural areas. The area is primarily suburban, and then there is a small area of urban character type of development applied to the Hickory Hollow Mall. This is the community character policy map. So these are the land use policies that will guide growth and development in Antioch Priest Lake. And just to summarize, there are district policies primarily on the airport and employment centers just east of the airport and in the crossings. Maintenance residential areas, which encourages the preservation of established residential neighborhoods. Evolving residential, which encourages the establishment of new character in emerging neighborhoods. And then also corridor policies applied mostly to Murfreesboro Pike. So just to talk a little bit about the process and community engagement, the planning staff first started meeting with major thought leaders in Antioch Priest Lake, which included CBL, which are the property owners of the Hickory Hollow Mall, and also members of CNAP, which is the umbrella business and residential group there. After we did some broad discussions with thought leaders, including the council members, we began to do visioning in the community, and the visioning also included detailed discussions on economic development, residential, open space, and housing. And what we did for each meeting, we provided or invited expert panelists that would come and speak on these issues to provide a little bit of education. We also figured out that the community was getting a lot younger, and so we did some focused stakeholder groups with the high schools out there. And then we also did traditional community outreach efforts, including news media, social media, in community meetings, and then also some hands-on design charrettes specifically for the mall. And so, as a result of all the community engagement that we conducted, over 400 people were engaged throughout this process. As a result of the engagement, the vision for the Antioch Priest Lake community resulted in a vision where they wanted to see greater access to Percy Priest Lake and other community scale parks, housing that's competitive in today's market, transportation improvements, specifically sidewalks, bikeways, and mass transit, and then also employment centers that produce jobs and rebounding retail. So just some highlights of the community plan land use policies. The conversation first started with the Hickory Hollow Mall. That was a major issue in the community. Issues or concerns that were raised were the retail competition within the region, the recession, which resulted in some changing shopping habits out there, and then the decline of a lot of the retail there, some negative perceptions associated with crime and safety. And then also, as we were beginning this process, General Services was working with parks and libraries to do the complex at the JCPenney site. And so we've been working with them to coordinate that. So the land use policy response was encouraging various development options for the mall, including just repurposing existing buildings on that site to even allowing for a complete tear down and redevelopment of the site. The policies don't preclude the inclusion of the new educational and civic uses. The policy also encourages better urban design and a mixture of uses to promote activity on the site to address some of the crime and safety issues. And then the policies are supportive of bus rapid transit near the mall. And so this is one of the design scenarios that the design studio team created throughout the process, and this is one of the more urban scenarios. And this scheme shows if you were to just redevelop that entire site, keeping investments that are here at the JCPenney site, and then also Nashville State Community College. And this is a photo montage that the design studio created to allow the residents and stakeholders to see what could happen if the policy were followed. With regard to retail centers and corridors, some concerns were infill and redevelopment of vacant retail in existing centers and on corridors, and also the character of suburban development. The land use policy response, we applied commercial land use policies to areas where there was existing commercial development rights and encouraged infill and redevelopment rather than new development that would compete or oversaturate the area with commercial. There are still opportunities provided for neighborhood scale retail, particularly with traditional neighborhood development. So if you think about Lenox Village, that type of development. The policy also recognizes market realities that, this is a suburban community, so you're going to get some suburban development, so enhancing suburban development with exceptional design. And then also bus rapid transit light transit stops along the corridors to encourage redevelopment. With regard to housing, there was a perception that there was too much affordable housing in the area and that there was more housing that was needed to accommodate move-up housing, so for growing families or growing professionals in their careers. The inventory out there is mostly single family, isolated from amenities, and is not seen as being competitive with some of the more mixed-use development that's occurring today. And there was an overall dislike of isolated multifamily, so there was an express interest in multifamily that's in that Lenox Village type of development form, but not isolated as it is developed today. So the land use policy response: in evolving areas south of Bell Road, we encouraged a Lenox Village style of development that would provide access to open space and retail centers, but that will also accommodate changing buyers in the market, so baby boomers, young professionals, and growing families. In maintenance areas, the policy encourages more move-up housing, particularly in rural areas where you can do large lot subdivisions, but then preserving existing neighborhoods with appropriately scaled infill development. With regard to open space and parks, there was a lack of community and neighborhood parks that people could get to via walking or biking. And so the policy response was we worked very closely with Metro Parks to identify potential open space properties in Southeast Davidson County, which was also an issue raised during the Nashville Open Space Plan process. The policy also provides guidance for the design of the park and the community center library complex at Hickory Hollow Mall. And when we were developing the bikeways and greenways plan, we considered where could you make connections to existing parks and future parks in the area. Transportation, sidewalks was what the community consistently said they wanted to see, and bike and greenway connectivity. Enhanced mass transit options, also creating street connectivity south of Bell Road, and also a big issue here was enhancing the Interstate 24 and Bell Road interchange. And so our transportation planner, Michael Briggs, worked closely with the neighbors and stakeholders to prioritize sidewalk needs. And those areas ended up being Hickory Hollow Mall, Hobson Pike, which is an area with 3 metro schools along it, and then Anderson Lane, which is a primary corridor in some of the more developed neighborhoods out there. Bike loops were provided as connections for low-risk riders or people who are not familiar with riding in on bike lanes on major roads. Local street connections south of Bell Road, the transit hub at the mall. So MTA was moving forward with their BRT Light from downtown Nashville along Murfreesboro Pike, Bell Road, and then to the mall. So we worked with MTA to identify that site as a possible transit hub there. And working with all of these transportation issues, Civic Design Center also helped us with scenarios for revamping the I-24 Bell Road interchange. And so this is Bell Road and I-24 reimagined by the Civic Design Center. And what you're seeing here is a sidewalk that could possibly go underneath the railroad bridge there, because right now there aren't any sidewalks out there and it's very unsafe condition. So this is looking from the Red Lobster parking lot, that perspective looking towards the Kia Ferris wheels back there in the background. Another option would be to provide a pedestrian bridge over the railroad and the interstate. And so this was very interesting to some of the our state agency and local agency transportation folks to see this area reimagined. With regard to districts, the area there were issues with the aesthetic condition of some of the office and industrial districts, particularly near areas like Harding Place and Antioch Pike, because these were also considered as gateways into the community. Also, the business community out there said that more employment services or options were needed to create a daytime employment population to support businesses there. The land use policy response was to encourage enhanced urban design in those gateway areas, create employment centers in areas east of the Nashville International Airport and in the crossings. And so the district employment center policy, which was on your consent agenda, encourages a mixture of light industrial office and a mixture of uses. The community plan also includes an implementation chapter. We talked a lot about, with the assistance from the design studio, talked a lot about mall redevelopment best practice, also suburban redevelopment best practices, and community branding, because the Antioch stakeholders really want to rebrand Antioch. Also discussed the possibility of a Murfreesboro Road urban design overlay where you could use a UDO to enhance suburban development and provide guidance for that area of Murfreesboro Pike that is primarily undeveloped at this point. Just a special note, a few years ago you approved the Rural Hill Road Detailed Neighborhood Design Plan, and this design plan is within the Antioch Priest Lake Community Plan area. So this plan will be absorbed into this new plan update. It'll be the similar document, but just in the appendix with some revisions based on some of the conversations we heard throughout this process. So some related amendments. So when we were looking at the study area for Antioch, we noticed that the Hickory Hollow Mall area had a small bump out, if you will. So this is Hickory Hollow Mall. This is Interstate 24. The mall is here. The Kia dealership and Target and all of that are over here. And so this area was really an extension of the Hickory Hollow Mall retail area. This area here between Cane Ridge Road and Old Franklin Road are some larger lot farms and undeveloped property that also had relation to the crossings because you can directly access it from Old Franklin Road. And so we pulled this area into the Antioch plan update process. So the plan amendment for this part of Southeast includes changing policies near Bell Road to T3 Community Center, and also changing policies back here between Cane Ridge Road and Old Franklin Road to T3 Neighborhood Evolving. Now, just to note, there is a existing commercial PUD here, and it allows quite a bit of commercial development. The planning staff thought that it would be unresponsible to allow that PUD to kind of move forward in a time when the Hickory Hollow Mall is struggling. And so this policy here really encourages for this to redevelop into more of a traditional neighborhood form with the allowance for some neighborhood scale commercial. And these were the policies prior to or the existing policies prior to this amendment. So you have Regional Activity Center policy, which includes this large PUD, and then neighborhood urban, which would include mixed-use development. The other small area that was included into the Antioch plan update, I'll keep clicking this, is this area between Couchville Pike and Pooley Road and Bell Road. And this is the area east of the airport. And also when we were looking at the relationship of this area with Antioch, it just made sense to pull this in. This area is being applied with the District Employment Center policy, which was on the consent agenda. But this policy just allows for greater flexibility in creating employment centers. So if you think about Metro Center and how it has a mixture of light industrial and office and University, Watkins Park, that's what's envisioned for this new policy. And so that's what's being applied next to the airport. These were the existing policies, industrial and RLM policies. And just to note that this district policy does not preclude residential from being included as a part of a employment center. Okay, so the staff recommendation is to approve item 3, the Antioch Priest Lake update with the conditions stated in the staff report, and approve items number 4 and number 5, the Southeast and Donaldson Hermitage Old Hickory Plan amendments. And so Michael's going to come up and present the item number 2, which is the Major and Collector Street Plan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Michael Briggs, and I'll be presenting on housekeeping amendments to the Major and Collector Street Plan. These amendments are related to the land use policies that are updated in the Antioch, Priest Lake, Southeast, Donaldson, Hermitage, Old Hickory plan areas that were just presented. Within your agenda packet, there are maps and a series of tables outlining proposed changes to street classifications. There are several reasons for proposing these amendments, and the first reason is to align the street classifications with the new land use policies proposed in the community plan. This primarily involves changes to the first 2 elements of the major and collector street plan designations. Secondly, a more detailed study of the area east of the airport is recommended within the Antioch Priest Lake Community Plan update. So collector avenues identified in that area are downgraded to local streets until a study of that area is complete. Third is that some local streets are upgraded to collector avenues. Fourth, a series of changes are proposed to help set transportation priorities to key locations. And lastly, the community's current thinking on bikeway and pedestrian infrastructure is reflected within the right-of-way amounts outlined in that update. The proposed changes to the Major and Collector Street Plan were included in the static draft of the community plan update and online with amendments to the Major and Collector Street Plan map. Since the posting of this information, Public Works contacted planning staff regarding several designations involving the number of travel lanes and right-of-way width amounts. Because of issues that they expressed with some of the designations, several conditions are highlighted in the staff report, and staff requests that the Major and Collector Street Plan be amended as outlined within the staff report, including those conditions. These conditions involve changes to the number of travel lanes and right-of-way widths on 5 streets, and also permit planning staff to fix any grammatical and minor errors because of the extensive update to the Major and Collector Street Plan. And that concludes this presentation.
Just to clarify, item number 3 has no conditions. The conditions are associated with item 4.
You've heard the items 2, 3, 4, and 5. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in support of any of these if they come forward? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, is a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion second, close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Derek?
Yes, I had an opportunity to participate in some of the meetings, and I want to echo what Council Lady Johnson mentioned. I do agree with her. Staff did a wonderful job putting this together, explaining things in detail to many of the participants, and we had a good number of folks who did indeed show up, who had an opportunity to speak and be heard, and I think, again, staff did an awesome job, and I plan on supporting all 3 of these items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to echo the staff. It seems like I don't think most people realize how much staff time goes into these things, and if it's probably, I was thinking to myself, not hundreds of hours, but probably thousands of hours of staff time, and then the leadership too on the Planning Commission. So, Mr. Chairman, good job. I do have a question on the item number 2. I'm assuming that Public Works has signed off on all of the amendments on item number 2. I just want to clarify that.
Sure, it's usually a continual process working with them, so we continue to go back and forth on those, and those were the last ones that we presented to them, and have not heard back from them at this point.
Good deal. Well, okay, perfect. I just want to make sure we're all, cooperating. So, but just listening to several of the things in the plan, it seems to make sense, and especially the interchange near Hickory Hollow Mall. I mean, that has needed some help, and I'm afraid it's going to take some state help because it is over an interstate. So I encourage that we really aggressively pursue that interchange. It's very dangerous. There's a lot of cars. It's old. Everything about it is terrible. So good job, though, and Council Lady and the council members. You guys have done an outstanding job in working with the community and making sure that this fits your needs. So I'm planning on definitely supporting it. Thank you.
Hey, Greg, I want to take up where you were speaking about the staff time. This is not just staff time here, 40 hours Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, whatever. This is a lot of hours, nighttime, and so it's just phenomenal what they do, and they're willing to do it. So give them accolades on that. Andre?
Well, I don't want to belabor a good thing, but there's so much creativity that went into this, and it's exciting to see how far we've come in even reaching out into the community to get them involved. The open space, following the open space plan is thrilling. I mean, just there's so many parts of it that are fantastic. So I think it's clear we're thrilled, so I won't go any further.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having gone through community processes since 2007 with the staff, and I appreciate all the work that they've done. And to the council lady, I know that you've been involved more than you wanted to, lots of hours. So I can appreciate that, and thank you. I do have one question. In the portion of the plan going south from where the Kia dealership and the Target store, that commercial area in there, I know that you've basically stopped any further commercial development through that open space that's running south there. And I just wondered, I know you said that you're considering the mall and the decline of businesses there, but as the mall area redevelops according to this community plan with more civic kinds of things, it's entirely possible that a commercial development could be spurred on that other side of the road, and the logical extension for that to take place would be to go south in that area that's currently undeveloped. And I just wonder if you considered that, and what was the rationale for at least not allowing for some of that space to be available for that kind of possibility.
A couple of things. First of all, the PUD is they have existing development rights. So what they're approved, they can do today if they don't come in and change it. The only time that the policy will come into play is if they have to come in and make drastic changes to the PUD. So that's there. Also, the crossings, which is just south of the mall, a lot of this area of the crossings is developed, but there's still a large portion of the crossings that's undeveloped, and that is where the community said they wanted to see more of their mixed-use employment development to occur. And so if the Hickory Hollow Mall area were to flip kind of into more civic uses, you do have a lot of opportunity in the crossings that has existing infrastructure, that has existing access from the interstate to develop out in that way. And the staff saw that this area here south of the Kia dealership as being a place where you could provide more residential. And so there is an opportunity to keep a commercial element in here. This T3 neighborhood evolving, we put in that special policy. That's actually one of the conditions, is to clarify that if you do more traditional type of development, you can have a commercial neighborhood scale centers in that. And so it doesn't eliminate the possibility for a commercial there in the future.
So how much, can you take your era and kind of give us a general idea of where the PUD is?
Here. I'm sorry I didn't put the outline on here. Actually, where this policy is applied, that's basically the extent of it. Yeah.
Okay, so the development rights that are currently outlined in the PUD could continue as long as they didn't go above what's allowed.
Yeah. And like I said, the policy that we're applying today, it does not preclude commercial development from occurring. It would just encourage it to be in a different form. Right now, this PUD, if you look at the plans, I mean, it's basically another regional retail center, a second Hickory Hollow, if you will. And so we would probably recommend a more compact version of that.
So they could do anything less than that. They could develop less than, be kind of like
just in a different form. I wouldn't necessarily say less, but in a different form.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, I've got a question while you're on that. Is that okay? While you're on that area, that area that's highlighted is there. As you said, there's a lot of rural left there now that could be an opportunity for development. Was there discussion I know you've got some open space for community garden ideas. Was there any discussion for any kind of open agricultural or co-housing opportunities that includes larger spaces for small farming or something like that in that area?
Yeah, there's actually, there is a working farm here, which they also have a CSA that they operate. This policy, suburban neighborhood evolving, it does encourage more of a dense suburban development pattern, but I don't think it's anything that we wouldn't consider if a farming element were included in something like that. Yeah.
Phil?
Tiffany and staff, congratulations. This is an absolute fabulous presentation. I'm so impressed because as I sat here listening to each one of the items that you listed, I said, yes, 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 yes. And all it did was just give us a wonderful list of opportunities for the area. And you know what? I would consider this, all that you've done, that summary, as an action plan. Now, just put 3 columns after each one of those things and put down there the first one, the date the plans are complete, the second one, when it's underway, and the third column when it's complete. And you will have an absolute fabulous community when it's through.
All right.
Thank you.
Judy?
Another column.
I won't belabor what my colleagues have already said, and in total agreement, I will not make the motion, but perhaps leave it to Commissioner Dalton, who has worked on this, to make that motion, and Commissioner Atkins to second that motion, as they are very passionate about this. I wrote a poem for the staff, but I won't share that at this time.
Hunter?
I spent all of last week out in Denver at the Urban Land Institute conference, and one of the things that came up over and over and over as perhaps our biggest challenge over the coming decades and millennium is transforming of our suburbs and allowing our suburbs to continue to grow in a way that that we can manage and that we can deal with transportation issues and so on. And one of the biggest challenges, of course, to that is creating better connectivity. And staff addressed this to some degree, but I was curious, do you have a map that talks about, because that's one of the biggest challenges in these suburban areas, is how we can begin to create more connections to give people options on ways to go. This area and other suburban parts of Davidson County are just so bottlenecked at our major arterials. I'm curious if there are some good opportunities.
Yes, we don't have a map per se showing all the connections, but I can explain to you how we analyzed all the connections. So areas south of Belrow, all in this light pink here, where you have more emerging subdivisions, there's a lot of subdivision approvals that have not been built out. And so Michael went through all the subdivision approvals to see where there were stub streets and looked to see where there were existing connections where you can connect stub streets when those developments come back in. So we looked at all of that. We looked at local street connections as well as collectors. So.
And those are all identified in the plan, so when the next development occurs.
There are some maps in the staff report, but those maps are just showing just changes that were made to the major and collector street plan. But to see just a broader map, we will have a map in the plan and also online. Yeah.
Thank you. And then I guess my only other question for the commission really is, are we comfortable approving item number 2 without Public Works ever getting back to the staff? And we've got, with the implementation of the Complete Streets Manual, we had a lot of conversations with Public Works, and they're the ones that really ultimately implement, I believe, that plan. So I don't know if there is maybe a condition upon reporting back, the staff reporting back to us once we get Public Works response, or
I think you would need to also defer item 4, because basically item 4 includes all the recommendations in item 2. So
if we deferred,
right,
but we could approve with a condition that the staff reports back on.
Is there somebody from Public Works?
Is there anyone from Public Works here?
And I can tell you, I guess, where we left off in the conversation. So we've made a number of changes to the major and collector street plan, really focusing on priorities. And so a number of the changes they were looking at involved a number of travel lanes. We worked with the MPO to look at the traffic model to see what would be the best balance in terms of widenings that would need to happen in the future. And so we've sent back with them the changes that we were proceeding with, and then ones that we disagreed with them on. And so the ones that we were proceeding with, that's where we've left off
at this point. Are these 1 through 5 the ones that we're doing, or the ones that are still in debate?
those are the ones that we were doing, and they had, I think, maybe another 4 or 5 that were issues of theirs where when we ran the model, it did not look like it would be something that needed to be widened based on both community input and the traffic projections.
And those 4 or 5 are included per the staff's recommendation?
Yes, these 4 or 5 are different than what's in the adopted major and collector street plan. Mm-hmm. So in some instances, it actually is a lower number of travel lanes. So the major and collector street plan may have anticipated 5 lanes, and we're recommending 3. In other instances, it may be 2, and we've actually gone up based on Public Works comments and are doing 3.
And there's only 5 of those left.
Right.
Okay, sorry. The way it was presented, it sounded like we hadn't even heard from Public Works yet. So
no, we sent back a fairly comprehensive analysis.
Great. Okay. All right. Good. I'll trust those will be working.
Derek, I'm going to get you to make a motion if you would, but before that, I'd like to clarify from staff what Councilman Claiborne brought up on the commercial area. There's a PUD there at present, but if we found that inactive, how would that affect that zoning or that overlay?
If the plan was adopted as proposed and the commission found the plan inactive, then you would have to decide, whether or not you wish to recommend to council that it would change. You would have a hearing, and if obviously you would have the opportunity to suggest a rezoning to something that would be consistent with this policy, which would be more of a suburban mixed-use policy, primarily kind of a suburban mixed-use policy, or amend the policy. I mean, and the council then could decide whether they want to do it or not. I mean, it's not. That's kind of where it's at now. But there's not been a request to consider it active or inactive.
Derek?
Quick question. On these items 2, 3, 4, and 5, are we able to approve all of them at once, or do we have to take them one at a time?
You can do 3, 4, and 5, and then do 2 after that.
Okay. Well, I move approval of staff's recommendations for items 3, 4, and 5 on our agenda.
Second. Motion second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Now I move for approval for item number 2 on our agenda.
Second. Motion second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Members of the audience, we now have item 12.
Mr. Chairman, just let me make one statement before everybody leaves on that. I want to commend both the staff on it, but I also want to commend the community. There were at least 2 nights when they were out in pouring rain that the community showed up as well as the staff, and we want to thank them for that and commend them for that.
Thank you. For anyone in the audience, item 12 is the only item that will be heard and be on public hearing. So all the other items have been taken care of either on consent or by public hearing on items 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Dwayne Cuthbertson with the Metro Planning Department. Just wanted to introduce myself. It's my first time presenting. This item before you today is it's agenda item number 12. It's a rezoning application for the Courts of Belmead neighborhood outlined in red, which is located generally to the east of Harding Pike, south of Leek Avenue. The request is to rezone the majority of the neighborhood from its current designation of R10 to RS10. Staff is recommending approval. Here's a map that clearly outlines the residential lots included in this application. Again, the existing zoning is R10, which is single and 2-family residential. The proposed zoning designation is strictly single-family residential RS10. The policy for this neighborhood is T3 neighborhood maintenance, which supports both the existing designation and the proposed RS10 designation. Here's a clearer map that gives you a view of the neighborhood and its boundaries, Leek Avenue being on the right of this map. There are 67 residential lots included in this application. 6 of them that are in the boundary contain duplex uses. Again, staff is recommending approval of the request as it's consistent with the neighborhood maintenance land use policy. I'll stand for questions.
Okay, this was requested by Council Lady Evans, and if she's like to make some comments.
Neighbors may want to, yeah.
Okay, well, I was going to see if she wanted to first. Okay, anyone that wishing to speak in support of this?
Yeah, I think Emily will speak in just a minute, but my name's Shepley Smith, and I live at 115 Lincoln Court with my wife and two small children, and we've lived in the Bellamy Courts neighborhood on and off for about 7 years, and I think I speak obviously for myself and the majority of my neighbors when I say that our main desire in pursuing this particular change is to preserve kind of the charm and the integrity of our neighborhood. We feel that has been challenged somewhat by some recent development activities in our area, and that this zoning modification is our best means to kind of preserve that charm. So I did want to provide a little background on kind of what led us to this particular spot, and it really started back in January when a particular piece of property was purchased on Lincoln Court by a local developer. This was located at 143 Lincoln Court. It was an existing duplex. It was on about 0.25 acres worth of land. And honestly, when we first heard the news that a developer was coming in, buying that property, was going to redevelop it, there was general excitement throughout the community because it was an older property. It wasn't well maintained, and the architecture really wasn't in keeping with the other homes in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, that excitement quickly went away when we learned that the developer planned to put two homes on this particular lot. And I think our first questions were, how in the world can they build two single-family homes on 0.25 acres? And then beyond that, the questions were, well, what are these structures going to look like? And obviously, we learned about our existing zoning regulations that permitted this, and we soon learned what these properties were going to look like as they began to go up. We learned that typically these developers will come in, they'll build up as far as they can go, they'll build back as far as they can go, and they'll put them as close together as they can, really to maximize the allowable envelope for these properties. So at that point, the neighborhood kind of started to talk about what we could do. And honestly, that fizzled a little bit until this same developer purchased another home on our street. And this one further up, a single-family home. They tore that one down. And at that point, the neighborhood started to rally to figure out what we could do. And we at that point met with this particular developer. We had some friends in the neighborhood who were friends with them. That was back in May. We talked to them about what their plans were for our area and this new lot. On their behalf, they were very understanding. They actually admitted that the scale of these first two units were much larger than what they had kind of anticipated in the plans. And they even went as far as to say that they would work with their architect on this next lot to make sure that the new homes were more in keeping with the style and character of our neighborhood. But at the end of the day, they admitted they were going to build two more units on this single-family lot. And I think the big takeaway for us from that meeting is that the developer actually suggested to those in attendance that day that we pursue a rezoning initiative to kind of protect ourselves, from additional development like that going forward. So honestly, that's what we did. We left that meeting. We scheduled a neighborhood meeting. We invited Councilmember Emily Evans. She walked us through the process for going through those steps. We issued petitions out to all the property owners in the neighborhood. We've received overwhelming support for the rezoning initiative. And that's really why we're here today. We're really not here to stop kind of remodeling or things like that in our neighborhood. We're really here to protect, again, the charm and the integrity. We want single-family homes replaced with single-family homes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Set it 2 minutes. Keep the buzzer going.
Good evening. I'm Seth Stewart, and I actually live on 106 LaSalle Court. I've been there approximately 7 years. Well, actually, it's been 8. My eldest son is 8. I've got 2 other small children as well, so 3 in total. I just wanted to say something really quickly, is that we made an addition on our house about 3 years ago, and we love the neighborhood so much that we actually wanted to take the extra effort to employing an architect, someone who has the skills, the knowledge. We didn't want to just put a box on the back of our house and double the size of it, so we wanted to maintain the character of the neighborhood. So we employed an architect who actually helped us to integrate the new room that we needed and to make sure it was seamless, and that from the street level, the house blended with the character of the neighborhood. So there is opportunity for people, and we don't want to, I second that with what Shepley was saying, is that we don't want to prevent others from adding on or improving. But the neighborhood's very important to us. It is a small-scaled neighborhood. And also another thing I just wanted to make a note of is that the property is relatively speaking, is quite expensive in our area. And what I've seen over the last, since I've been living here for the last 8 years or so, is that has dictated the style and the use of the land and the property in that area. And I don't think that the value of the land should dictate the purpose or what is actually developed on the land. And so what you're finding is that the developers, rather than putting a nice, decent home and making a very skinny, razor-thin margin on it, they're actually developing it for, obviously, a profit being foremost, and not the community or the design of the area being foremost. And so that's where I think we've gotten kind of sideways, is that it'd be great to put one house on this, but when you're in it for $425,000, $450,000, it's hard. So I just wanted to make that last point.
Thank you. Great to see you all. I'm Emily Evans. I represent the 23rd Council District. I live at 113 Pembroke Avenue, 37205. This request, as you know, was brought to me by the neighborhood. It's actually a request that has been floating around in an idea for several years, probably from my first year in office. And what actually is driving my consideration of the zoning bill, in addition to obviously the community concerns, are 2 things. One thing is obviously the character. The second thing is the stormwater issues. This neighborhood and the one that I live in, just over the rise, Belmead Links, were both built without any storm drainage. And the rooftops have all gone from 400 square feet, 500 square feet, 1,000 square, so you've doubled and tripled the impervious area in my neighborhood and this neighborhood. Plus you're really building out the lot extensively, making it very, very difficult for our stormwater management to find solutions, getting through along easements, along lot lines, working through backyards, and trying to actually get the infrastructure in place that needs to be there becomes more and more difficult the more intensely developed an area is that was built without a drainage system, and not contemplating the kind of development that we have seen in the last few years. I know this commission is always sensitive to downzoning because of the housing stock, making sure there's great variability in the housing stock and lots of options. Within walking distance of this neighborhood, there are 5 multifamily, significantly sized multifamily. I know the perception of this area of town is single homes on large lots, and actually the housing stock in the immediate area of this neighborhood is fairly diverse. With a number of multifamily facilities, there are some duplexes, and of course in this neighborhood there are duplexes which will continue to exist under the code. So we have also strategically removed from the downzoning areas on Leak, one of which is a multifamily project, but also to enable redevelopment there. One, because if it's redeveloped in a multifamily kind of way, we would be able to impose greater stormwater demands on that facility. As you know, we don't ask single-family property owners to install build stormwater infrastructure, but we do when somebody puts up an apartment building, typically. So we've strategically eliminated certain lots that are likely candidates. One actually is a multifamily, but are likely candidates for additional development, keeping the housing stock as diverse as we can while preserving the neighborhood. So I ask for your support, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, is a motion to close the public hearing. Motion second, close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Stewart.
Thank you. I guess this is a little unusual, but I wonder, with the chair's permission, if I could ask the council lady to come back so we could have maybe a dialogue about a part of this.
Sure.
As always, you've thought this through much more than most people do.
Thank you.
And you probably know, as you mentioned, a lot of us on the commission have been trying to find ways to promote density where appropriate, and that seems at odds with moving to RS zoning. You've brought up some more careful analysis than I had just reading over it. But my question is, how do you think we should, as a commission, look at future downzonings like this, where we want a little more density close in, where people can patronize jobs and restaurants and transit and all of that?
Well, and so do we. You know, we in our community, one of, I think, our challenges is dense development, specifically for the older community. We have one large multifamily facility at the corner of Leek and Harding Road, which is highly desirable and a place that, the older folks, when they decide, they don't need a family home anymore, go. So we absolutely recognize that. In the community plan, the West Nashville community plan that we did a number of years ago, we actually identified places, and one is directly, if Leek, you could draw a line down Leek and across the railroad tracks, you would almost hit an area that we've identified for additional density in the form of townhomes or flats, I think is what the community plan calls for. We've also discussed, we haven't got a proposal for it, but greater density on Highway 70, so you would turn left and go down there. So the community consensus appears to be, let's put it on the corridors, let's push it out along Harding Road, and build as much density as we can. And that's my response to it. I'm looking at the whole community instead of one neighborhood.
Well, that's helpful. I think you have done a better job in your area than some have in protecting some different kinds of stocks. And I also realize it's not, in your area, it's not really an issue of affordability, because what's being put up with two structures on one lot is certainly not affordable housing. It's just covering all the ground. So it's not an easy question for us. I'm not happy about how much downzoning there's been, but I think you've convinced me that this is one that's warranted.
Well, and I think that the best path to, or one of the easiest paths to affordability is making sure you have lots of it. And so the more development I think we can do on the corridors and specifically on Harding Road, and give the options, and also over on Charlotte, to give the multifamily option for that person who is young and doesn't want the family home, or that person that is old and doesn't need the family type home.
Yeah, thank you.
You just meant, I think the concern being stated is maybe the size. And although you downzone to single family, someone could still even build a larger home than what 2 units would be, that maybe might be better served with a community character say here's if you're going to build, whether it's one family or two family, here's the character and the style that we'd like to have, is to have that type of control more so than just saying it's one unit, because you could go in and build 6,000 or 7,000 square feet, which would overwhelm the neighbors next door by right.
Right.
So that is another way to kind of look at that. So.
Well, that is my question too. In the same vein, is did you consider? I mean, to me, I don't understand how this protects you. I'm sympathetic to the concern, and given what he said, that's what I was thinking. Did you consider a design overlay?
We discussed it, and in answer to your question, let me just first say that 2 homes will usually be bigger than one home, because you have 2 kitchens and 2 living rooms and 2 dining rooms instead of one of each of those. But I understand that given the location of this particular neighborhood, there will be a tendency to push towards a bigger home. The neighborhood is not eligible for a historic type design restrictions. I proposed to the community an SP type arrangement that would incorporate in a little bit more specific fashion the stormwater issues. And what they suggested is they'd like to start here, see what kind of response or impact they're getting from the development, and then take that next step if they need to. So that's absolutely something we're considering for the future, and may be back here to do that.
Let me just mention, I think you know it, Council Lady, but the Primrose, Catherine, that was the SP, wasn't it? The Primrose Avenue SP, but it dealt with. It was the UDO, okay. But it dealt much with the same kind of things. They were trying to keep more of the character of that neighborhood, so it might be something that the neighborhood wants to look at.
Okay, so we can come back and do, rather than an SP, we could do a UDO, but we did discuss it. We discussed it in detail. We decided that this was going to be the first step, and if this works, great. If it doesn't, then we'll talk about the design.
I don't see how this protects you at all. I mean, if somebody could buy, if you're downzoning it to single family, you could put together 2 lots and build one of those giant houses that you see over in West Meade that are coming on. I mean, I don't see how the zoning as a tool helps the cause.
These lots are pretty small.
I know, but you could combine. I mean, I like the area. I like the size and the scale of it, and it is interesting. But to me, it seems like the protection would be in a UDO more than in a zoning as a better tool.
Well, we have my observation has been that especially with these 2, the neighborhood's calling the twin towers, these 2 duplexes, which are not connected because we got rid of the umbilical cord. So they, as a result, are very thin, and their height actually, of course, looks dramatically different than probably what it actually is because they're so skinny. So I think we'll get rid of that problem.
But I could build a high, tall townhome shaped thing on one of those lots. It's a single family. I mean, not I, but someone could. I don't see how you're protected.
I think you're protected because you will have less square foot. I mean, if you have 1 kitchen instead of 2 kitchens, if you have 1 master bedroom instead of 2, it's going to be smaller.
I'm going to quit talking because we haven't let anyone else talk, but I do think there is some value in, a duplex without RS, it may make it easier for a developer or speculator to see it as a tear down than with RS. It may make it partly that. I'm just glad. I'm happy to hear that they're still looking at other options, and I didn't know it wouldn't be eligible for certain overlays. I'm surprised.
I do not think there are enough historic structures, but I think that this is the first toe in the water as far as rezoning, and UDOs can be fairly complicated, and it's a way to get people acquainted with the problem and build consensus around design solutions.
I'm sorry, while you're still up here, duplexes can be beautifully designed and contained within the character of a neighborhood. And so back to what Stuart is saying, I think duplexes can be very appropriate, but again, it has to have a design criteria to allow it, like this gentleman did with his house, to keep it in the character of the neighborhood.
I agree with you, but my observation has been that the market doesn't agree with me. And I'll give you a good example. On Harding Place, there is a non-contributing duplex, which is going to be sold, and the property owner has gone to the Historical Commission because it's covered by the overlay to talk about what he can build, and really where it's looking like it's going to end up is it's not going to be a duplex. It's going to be a single family, because of the sheer what the market demands a duplex look like in this city does not match what the historic overlay requires. So I think you could have a beautifully designed duplex. I agree with you, but the development community doesn't seem to agree with me.
The Gen Y and the seniors are interested in smaller spaces and walkable communities.
Absolutely.
As you know, and as our other plans say. So they don't, well, I understand your point.
Well, and we've got those areas on Leak, which hopefully will redevelop into something that has will balance the reduced density with some higher density, and we do have pretty good density in the neighborhood.
Stuart, do you have other questions?
No, thank you.
Hunter?
Thank you.
Thanks. I have a few questions for staff. Are the 6 existing duplexes, are those included in this rezoning?
That's correct. There are 6 within this rezoning boundary. They don't include the duplexes that are opted out on Leak Avenue.
Okay, so the 6 properties that are on Leak, there's an additional 6 that are proposed to be rezoned.
There are 6 existing duplex lots within that red boundary shown on the map.
Okay. And then the council lady addressed at least one of the properties along Leak. I'm curious, it's somewhat of a snaggletooth approach along Leak. I'm curious with each one of those lots, are those all multifamily or duplexes currently?
There are 6 lots, and this pointer works. These 3 contain a duplex, a triplex, a triplex. These 3 all contain single-family dwellings. So the 3 easterly lots currently contain single-family dwellings. The 3 westerly lots contain triplex and duplex.
Okay, and then but there are 2 lots that have been identified to be rezoned that are on Leak, or 3 lots, I guess, right? I guess I'm trying to understand the logic behind why the line does this and why some lots on Leak make sense to stay single family, some don't. Is it people that opted in, opted out?
I think that was a result of the negotiation process ahead of this application. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think property owners along Leak were given the option to opt out, and I think those 6 exercise that option. The 3 that exist that are within the boundary on Leak did not exercise that option to opt out.
Okay. The general lot sizes in the area, do you know?
The majority of them are roughly 8,000 to 8,500. I would say that roughly 25% of the existing lots within that red boundary are 10,000, maybe slightly under 25% of those lots. But the prevailing lot size is about 8,000 to 8,500 square feet.
So if someone tears down a house there, can they rebuild? Can they build a new home?
If it needs 10,000.
Yes.
Under the existing zoning?
Under the new zoning?
Or under the new zoning?
Yeah, there'll be a non-conforming lot that was recorded, subdivided before, what the date is, whatever the date is, yeah. But they can get a single family house, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But what is the 10,000 minimum?
If you were going to subdivide, you'd have to have 10,000 foot minimum. These are all pre-platted lots.
Oh, so I see, you can rebuild on the existing lot as a non-conforming.
A single family house.
Okay, I didn't understand that.
So the area is 4 to 6 units to the acre, maybe? Yeah. Oh. Okay. I wouldn't mind hearing from Steve Mishu on the stormwater issues in the area.
Is there any chance that I might be able to just...
No, the public hearing's closed. If the commissioner wants to ask you a question, they can, but the public hearing's closed.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Steve Mishu, Metro Stormwater. I've kind of heard the discussions, and while I'm not really familiar with the zonings on what it could allow, what it won't allow, but I think what it will help is if you do switch zonings, you may be able to at least limit the amount of driveways. Well, you may not be able to limit the amount of the impervious area for maybe the rooftops, but a single family will have usually one driveway, and if a duplex, you could have two driveways. So I guess it could have a minimal impact benefiting stormwater by having this single family RS.
Are there stormwater issues in the area? I know we don't have storm drainage, as the council lady had pointed out.
Well, I'm not familiar with this area, but I know just down Page Road, there is a lot of issues just downstream of the golf course.
Okay.
And if I could answer that, on my bucket list, Hunter, is to get in design a way to address the stormwater issues in this neighborhood, the Links and the St. Henry's neighborhood. And specifically, there is a capital project on FY13, I think, along Leak.
Has there been discussion of use of pervious paving, or would that only be helpful a comment in an SP?
That's the kind of thing we could do in a design overlay or an SP. As you know, we don't regulate stormwater for single-family teardowns, which is what's contributing dramatically to the problem. Nickel Lane, the St. Henry's neighborhood, the Belmead Links, this neighborhood, and because the houses are so close together and the lots are so small, actually coming in and installing, retroactively a system is getting increasingly difficult as each year goes by. But we are working towards design in those areas.
Nichols Lane is the one I was familiar with that has definitely ongoing drainage issues. But unfortunately, there's another department that actually handles existing drainage issues while I represent, making sure that new development doesn't, cause any additional impacts.
Is this in the Metro, or is this Belmead, City of Belmead?
This is Metro.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Rick, you're going to be doing a cost of sprawl study soon, and I'm curious if the results of that study will bring to light some of the questions that we've raised in previous meetings and that are, I think, applicable here, that our lower density areas essentially don't pay for themselves in terms of the infrastructure that's provided, that the tax revenue generated by the lower density areas really aren't paying for the services that are provided to those areas. So thus there's other parts of the county that are making that up. This is a pretty low density area. Though they've got high property values too. So I don't know where it all sort of sorts itself out, but when we make these decisions to downzone, and I certainly think there are probably areas for certain reasons that make sense to do that, but I'd like for us to be thinking about those issues. And I don't know, Rick, if you have any insight or...
Well, I mean, obviously the cost of sprawl study is being undertaken, and we'll have that information. I mean, as you mentioned, this is probably an area of 5 or 6 units per acre, I'd guess. To be honest, is probably a lot higher density than a whole lot of the parts of the county. So I'm not sure. This one with the property values and the density probably carries itself. But I do think the point is that the difference in location and design will show. We are doing, this study will include 3 areas. It includes Bradford Hills and Lenox Village, which are directly across the street, and it includes the Gulch. So there will be the analysis of both the initial cost of servicing those, the ongoing cost of maintenance, and the cost of continuing that from the city's perspective, as well as tax revenue. And that study is just now underway and should be complete by the end of the year.
That's all I've got.
Phil, you wanted to say something?
I just want to follow up on the question about the 6 lots within the red boundary that do have duplexes. What happens if one of those is torn down or something happens? Can they build back a duplex?
The answer is yes, they can. There's actually a provision in the code that gives somewhat vested rights. If you have a duplex use and it's damaged, regardless of the percentage, you have 2 years to rebuild back.
But you can't tear it down.
Actually, I think you can.
Either way. Damage and this is damage. That's what I was clarifying.
You actually can.
Self-inflicted.
Okay, I just want to be sure because it said percentage of damage.
Okay, I just wanted to, that point. I didn't know if the neighborhood was aware of that, that it was explained. Okay, good. Judy, that's it.
I just wanted to ask if if the neighbors in here, if they had an opportunity to opt out if they wanted to. Was there community meetings where people had a chance to opt out? No. Within this red area, besides the 6, if there were people who didn't want.
There were 2 community meetings. As I understand it, we have 2 possible requests for an opt-out, which I'll do what I always do, which is wait until 3rd reading to make any changes or amendment to the bill.
Okay, but they do have the opportunity. And then my only other question, Council Leader, you indicated that somewhere around here there was some housing, I guess RTN or apartment complex or something. Where is that on?
At the corner of Leek and Harding Road, there is a multifamily project which is probably about 7 or 8 stories tall, I think. Then these are the things in walking distance. At the corner of Belmead and Harding Place, there is the historic Belmead Apartments. Going down Belmead Boulevard, there's a condominium project called the Glen Court at 527 Belmead Boulevard, where I lived when I first got married. I've moved such great distances. It is a 3-story multifamily. Then, of course, right in the immediate area, you have the 3 triplexes as well. And we have identified a number of areas that are currently single family in the community plan that we would encourage greater density.
Okay. Thank you.
Phil, do you have something you want to add?
No, I think I'm very comfortable with this. It looks good, and I understand fully what is being proposed here. Thank you.
Councilman. Derek? Andre?
Well, I still want to urge the community to push forward towards an SP or a UDO, and I think I want to be clear that the way I'm going to vote is its purpose is to urge that. I don't think it's going to matter, but that's what I'm going to do.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Well, and also because I like the variety of housing that's possible there.
Just because there have been 2 questions about rebuilding, or if you tear something down, can you rebuild it? I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of the provision in 174650, which talked about inactivity of nonconforming uses. When a nonconforming use has been inactive for 2 years or more, and the land associated with it and its improvements shall only be used in accordance with the provisions of this title. So in other words, you couldn't tear it down and then not do anything with it for a period of 2 years and then expect to build it back as a duplex. So I just wanted to make sure that the board had that clarity.
You can do anything within 24 months, correct?
Within 2 years. Within 2 years, you can. Is that under the same section? It's under the same section, a different subsection that talks about non-conforming structures that are not otherwise protected, continuation of the use. Basically, you can repair it, you can do enlargements and conversions, and it also talks about damage or destruction of non-conforming uses. It says a non-conforming structure damaged by an involuntary means to less than 50% of its total floor area may be reconstructed. If damage exceeds 50% of the total floor area, the structure shall be reconstructed in accordance with the applicable provisions of the title. If requested by the property owner, the Board of Zoning Appeals may consider the percentage of reconstruction costs in lieu of the percent of the floor area ratio damage, and the value of the land shall be excluded. So I think that between those 2, it kind of addresses the 2 questions that have been asked. So provided that it is damaged and you can rebuild it, and it doesn't exceed the requisite floor area ratio amount, or provided that you tear it down and you want to reconstruct something on the property and you do that within the 2 years that's allowed for it, then I think that would be fine to do.
Move to accept staff recommendation to approve.
Second. Motion second to approve with staff recommendations. All in comments? Stuart?
I think we've had a good discussion, and council ladies brought us some interesting things for us to think about in terms of citywide, in terms of how we do stormwater. We have, in the past, rezoned entire neighborhoods to RS. We should be having more R and less RS instead of the other way around. I'm supporting the motion, however, because it's been demonstrated, I think, pretty well that this is one of those parts of town which really does have its share of different housing stock in terms of density. And I really do hope the neighborhood will work on a more ambitious way to do this, but I think I can understand why they want to do this. And I'm supporting it not because I really think RS is a great urban zoning for our time, but because of the specifics of this case.
I have one other question for staff. Are there sidewalks in this neighborhood and along Leak Avenue?
No, there are not.
Okay. I guess the reason I ask is, and there is
a sidewalk. The sidewalk runs from Bellmead Boulevard to Harding Road on Leak, on the neighborhood side. There is a sidewalk. Palmer Park is directly across the street, so the sidewalk is used.
But there's not in the neighborhood.
I'm sorry?
Not in the neighborhood.
It's what?
There's not sidewalks on the streets, Lincoln and...
No, and there's very little traffic too.
Yeah. I guess the reason I ask is, this area appears to be one of the few areas that is somewhat higher density in terms of the single-family neighborhoods. It's close to Harding Pike. It's somewhat walkable. It's a prime candidate to increase density compared to the rest of this area, much of this area that's much larger single-family homes. I guess I'm just making that assumption that there's a few of these sort of small lot subdivisions that were platted probably in the 40s or 50s or earlier, and so in a way it's a prime opportunity to transform and create more walkable walkable mixed-use, higher density areas. So I certainly understand the desire of the community. It to some degree is a preservation tool, but I think I'm not going to support the motion because I think one after another of these areas that have potential to redevelop or have potential for increased density, we've got to draw the line somewhere, So I'm not sure it'll make a difference as well.
We've got a motion to approve with staff recommendations. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Got two opposed. And along that line, Stuart, you've been been the chairman of the subcommittee on our rules, regulations, and policies. And I'd like for you to maybe look into what our policy is as far as downzoning the density. And then we could have a work session on that maybe in January. And maybe Hunter and Andre would serve on that committee with you, and whoever you'd like to serve. So.
More of a general plan. We've got another volunteer committee right here.
Okay. Well, we'll have a work session on it. Just come back with what recommendation the policy would be. So. Okay. All right. Anything from historic? Hunter? Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Hunter?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I do have one other announcement.
Okay, sure.
I just wanted to let the commission know that the Sobro master plan update is well underway and is scheduled to be completed in late December and January. There will be a public presentation, I believe, on December 5th with the consultant team's recommendations, and it's coming along nicely. We're going to give the planning staff an update next week on that as well.
Give us the boundaries again.
Sure. The study area is defined, and we actually renamed the project to the South of Broadway Strategic Plan because people really think of, they didn't want us to rebrand the Gulch or Rutledge Hill and these other areas Sobro because that's really more the area that's closer in where the convention center is built. So it's Broadway on the north, the interstate loop along the south, all the way to the river, and the river's the eastern boundary.
And the
western is the interstate, so it does include the Gulch.
All the way over to the back loop? It includes the Gulch, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, essentially bound by the interstate, Broadway, and the river.
Okay. Bill, thing from Parks.
Parks' next meeting is Election Day, November the 6th at high noon at Parks headquarters.
Councilman, anything?
The council will not meet again until the 13th. They opted to move from the election day to the following week.
Okay. Yeah, why don't you give the director's report? We'll have the director's report, and then I want to discuss the retreat.
All right, a couple of things. I don't know that we actually pointed this out at the last meeting, but Jennifer Carlett did have her babies on October 8th. Ella Diane and James are both doing well. Both Ann and I saw them yesterday, I think. They were a little over 5 pounds, and mother is doing fine, as expected, with brand new twins. As fine as you can be. Last time we saw Jonathan, he was more of a deer in the headlights, but I think he's coming along just fine as well. Just one thing I want to note, there is a proposed rules and procedures amendment. We hand that out, but we'll get that to you. I think it'll be considered at the next meeting. The need for this is because now that the council is holding public hearings every month, we need to revise our appeal procedures so that the situation that basically exists now that the council could adopt an ordinance and then somebody could appeal to the planning commission for a rehearing after the council already adopts the ordinance. So we're trying to not have that. That simply doesn't make any sense. So that's going to be there. A couple of things on the general plan. Just want to point out we've got a number of contracts that are underway. Our community engagement consultant we've got a pre-bid conference next month. We're doing several studies. I mentioned Hunter mentioned the cost of sprawl analysis. That's being done with Smart Growth America and is underway. We're working with them in our finance department. We're looking at a regional equity analysis that Reconnecting America is doing. Both of those, the comparative cost of sprawl and the regional equity analysis, are not at any cost to the city. These were national groups that have agreed to come into Nashville and do that. Likewise, ULI, Governor's Assistance Panel, is going to kind of come in after these and look at leveling the playing field for urban redevelopment. And we want to thank Rose and Hunter for that work, and that's also not at any cost to the city. The one that was approved today, which is the Nashville revenue study, will actually compare. There's a lot of comparisons that have been done in terms of the implications, the way the property taxes are assessed. And some of the formula for that tend to reward larger lot suburban development at the expense of smaller lot urban development. If you have for example, a large 30-acre superstore in the suburbs often pays less in property taxes per acre than a smaller neighborhood corner grocery store. And so we're going to be doing some of that analysis and trying to bring that information to you. We did have a presentation the steering committee did of the findings, the poll findings of that we've just completed. We do have copies of that video for anyone that wishes to see that. I think, Jim, you were there, I believe, at that. But anybody that wishes to, Craig has copies of the video and be glad to find them. Pretty fascinating, I think, findings. This is the result of the 1,000 in Davidson County and 1,000 out inside the region, but outside Davidson County, the survey results from that. The next steering committee will be of the planning, the community plan will be November 8th. It's going to be a very busy day. This will be at Connexion America's new community center. I think we're the first one. Eric Rodriguez, who's the vice president of the Office of Research Advocacy and Legislation of La Raza, will be addressing demographics and the change in fact of Hispanic population and the policy implications. And they will also be reviewing the general plan process. We're going to spend some time whenever the retreat is kind of going through that process and talking with the commission and bringing you up to speed on that. A couple of other things. I wanted to announce Catherine made a very successful presentation on the Midtown Plan and rezoning last week in Memphis to the State Conference of the American Planning Association. She's here and be glad to present it to you if you wish to or not. There are a couple of APA seminars that are scheduled. The next one is November.
Memphis has approved our Midtown rezoning?
No, but Memphis had the conference and they were all excited about Catherine's presentation. Let's see what else I want to do. We are doing a couple of articles on sort of national publications. One in particular is on form-based codes for better cities and towns. The Fairgrounds plan is continuing. Ann has got that well under control. Just as a reminder that if you want to come to the General Plan Steering Committee in the morning, you would need to be here at 1:30 for your work session before the next Planning Commission meeting on the 8th. November 8th, 1:30 work session, which is a presentation. This is a very nice opportunity to get with the Parks Commission, the Planning Commission, and the Fair Board for a work session and presentation on the Phase 1 findings of the Fairgrounds Plan.
And then what time is the steering committee?
Steering committee meetings at 9 a.m.
That's from 9 to what?
9 to 11.
And if 1:30 work session.
And then 1:30 work session, and it will last an hour and...
About an hour and a half.
Right, because we have to break that down to set up this meeting, which will happen at 4 o'clock.
Oh, and then we have our full partner.
Yes.
And if all the commissioners would attend that, then we won't require you to be here on the 22nd.
Yeah, that's right.
Wait a minute.
And I think that's about all that
Rick,
I have. Yes.
I have a quick question. I thought we were going to change the name of the level the playing field study or committee or whatever we called it.
That's possible. That's just the last I've heard.
There's not an official name yet.
Okay, well, the reason being, and it's just, I know it's semantics, but we did talk about it. We got some advice from our Atlanta contemporaries that said that we don't want to create an us and them right off the bat. I mean, we are really trying to do regionalism and working with the surrounding areas within Davidson County and without. And so although we do have that idea in mind and we understand it, we still want to be careful that we're not creating friction before we even start. And so leveling the playing field kind of does that without, inadvertently probably, but it does. And so we thought we need to come up with a more cooperative name.
I didn't come up with a name. It was passed on to me.
No, I know. We did, but I just didn't want you to perpetuate it until we can come up with the right new name, please.
All right.
One final thing that I'd like to discuss is a retreat. We tried to have this back in August, had a little bump in the road, and this was rescheduled for November the 10th, thinking that the mayor would be able to attend. He's going to be out of the country. So I want to get everybody's thoughts as to whether we move forward on the 10th or we wait for another date when the mayor could be here. We could have him at ask him to come to one of the work sessions prior to the meeting. We only have one meeting now in November, and that's on the 8th, and I assume he wouldn't be able to be there because if he can't be there on the 10th, so that would only allow sometime in the first meeting, which is the only meeting in December, which would put us up to January. And so just anybody that's got any comments or any ideas on that?
Actually, I have a new thought from what we all emailed. We do want to encourage commissioners to attend these important things on the 8th. And if that's sort of a marathon day, do we then turn around and require a big day 2 days later on that Saturday and expect to get good attendance at both. I don't know. It's just a thought. It might be hard for everybody to map out 2 days in the same week. That's almost a full day each. That's just regardless of the mayor. It's just suddenly I realize that's kind of a big.
Yeah, but that's an optional thing that the commission may or may not go to. I see what you're saying, but my problem is, it sounded like as we got some of the emails back, several commissioners weren't really going to be able to attend Saturday anyway. Is that right?
I'm not available at all.
There's 3 missing.
It seems like Jeff is going to be missing.
Yeah, Jeff's got a wedding.
And you're not going to be.
I'm not going to be available.
And Bob Lehman won't be here. He has a wedding. His wedding is on the 10th.
Oh, that's not an excuse.
So if there are so many conflicts, why couldn't we just move it into the first portion of 2013 and start off with a clean page and start growing again?
We're not going to be finding a lot of times when more people can meet the closer we get to holidays. No. So I think if we don't do it the 10th, we probably are talking about after the first of the year.
Is there any pressing business that we expected to cover? I mean, it's important, obviously, that we get together soon.
But urgency.
Right.
Not from staff's perspective. I don't know if the commission has. I mean, I want to, at some point, again, bring the commission up so that you're comfortable with where we are on the general plan, but that doesn't have, it's not a time priority.
If we go on the 8th, we'll learn something.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it the consensus then, by a show of hands, that we wait then until after the first of the year, that Kelly then would contact the mayor's office and see what dates in January and early February?
She should start now, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Should be voting.
Show of hands.
Yes.
She already has.
All in wants to do that, raise a hand. Okay, you seem to be unanimous, so.
You're off the hook, Bob.
Now you can say I was going to be there.
So Kelly, if you would just check and see, starting probably the second Saturday in January on up into mid-February, we'll pick out the best date. Any other comments or